Good day everyone, this is our report from PED 6, Assessment of Learning 2. Our topic is about developing performance tasks. Our objectives first is to demonstrate the ability to design performance tasks that engage the challenged learners, fostering real-world application of knowledge and skills. Second, understand the components of GRASP's model or goal, role, audience, situation, products, and standards, and its role in guiding the creation of authentic performance tasks. Third is recognize the diverse needs, learning styles, and abilities of students. Fourth, identify different types of scoring rubrics, including analytic and holistic. Last one, utilize rubrics not only for grading but also as tools for formative assessment, feedback, and improvement. Before we proceed to the designing performance task, let us know first what is performance task. A performance task is any learning activity or assessment that asks students to perform to demonstrate their knowledge, understanding, and proficiency. So performance tasks are tangible learning tools that encourage students to apply their knowledge in real-world contexts. They are commonly used in disciplines like visual and performing arts, physical education, and career technology, but can be applied to all subjects and grade levels. This task helps students understanding and proficiency with complex processes, integrating content knowledge with 21st century skills like critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, communication, and also in technology use. As we learn the nature of performance-based assessment, the next step is to design it aligned to the learning goals. Focusing on the knowledge and skills targeted, you will now need to think of some tasks which must be performed authentically. Clearly, comprehensive planning and designing of performance-based assessment should be taken into consideration. So, designing performance tasks. Designing performance assessment entails critical processes which start from the tasks that the teacher wants to assess. A well-designed performance assessment helps the students to see the connection between the knowledge, skills, and abilities they have learned from the classroom, including the experiences which help them to construct their own meaning of knowledge. Here are the criteria on designing performance tasks. Number 1 is integrate knowledge and skills. Integrate knowledge and skills across multiple content standards or strands within a content area. Integrated knowledge connects, relates, values, and unifies concepts in situations. Students integrate their knowledge by exploring, identifying, organizing, and synthesizing ideas and information to assess experiences and solve problems. Number 2, measure capacity of students. Measure capacities such as depth of understanding, research skills, complex analysis, and identification or providing of relevant evidence. Assessment methods should help the instructor answer the questions, how do I know the required learning has taken place, or what might I need to modify about the course to best support student learning and be able to develop a good design of performance task. Information about students' learning can be assessed through both direct and indirect measures. Direct measures may include homework, quizzes, exams, reports, essays, research, projects, case study analysis, and rubrics for oral and other performances. Third is um, require student-initiated planning. A student-initiated requires students-initiated planning, management of information and ideas, interaction with other materials. Student-initiated projects are for students choosing to design their own learnings. In the reading and writing tasks, students have an opportunity to plan their responses and manage and interact with information or data gained through reading or listening to or viewing text. In mathematics, students determine and employ strategies for solving problems and use a variety of mathematical tools and techniques in doing so. Fourth, production of extended responses. Require production of extended responses such as oral presentations, exhibitions, and other scorable products, including more extended written responses, which might be revised and edited. So, an extended response item is an open-ended question that begins with some type of prompt. These questions allow students to write a response that arrives at a conclusion based on their specific knowledge of the topic. Extended written response assessment requires students to construct a written answer and at least several sentences in length in response to a question or task. This test is having students explain how something happens or why something happens. This, this is a very involved and time-consuming assessment to score well. Fifth, real-world task and or scenario-based problem. We need to reflect a real-world task and or scenario-based problem. So performance tasks should incorporate real-world or college and career-related skills that requires students to accomplish complex goals during multiple testing sessions. Tasks should be multi-stepped and allow for reflection and revision. So scenario-based learning is an effective and engaging instructional strategy that promotes problem solving and critical thinking. It provides learners with a realistic and immersive experience that is vastly um, different from the more traditional or passive training approach. For example, a problem-based learning project could involve students pitching ideas and creating their own business plans to solve a societal need. Students could work independently or in a group to conceptualize or design and launch their innovative product in front of classmates and community leaders. Number 6, multiple approaches. Allow for multiple approaches. There are many different ways of learning, both formally and informally. Writing or speaking tasks should encourage or allow multiple approaches to developing and organizing ideas. For example, narrative writing might be used to support the presentation of an argument, while analysis and synthesis might be used to convey ideas in a narrative. In mathematics, problems presented in tasks should lend themselves to multiple solutions and or solution strategies. 7. Relevant and meaningful. Represent content that is relevant and meaningful to students. So students want to learn about things that have an impact on them in their daily lives. Assessment should integrate grading, learning, and motivation for your students. Well-designed assessment methods provide valuable information about student learning. They tell us what student learned, how well they learned it, and where they struggled. So, number 8, 21st century skills allow for demonstration of important knowledge and skills, including those that address 21st century skills such as critically analyzing and synthesizing information presented in a variety of formats, media, and etc. So 21st century skills have become a ubiquitous topic of conversation in school districts across the United States. The skills most often mentioned include collaboration, communication, creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving. Other skills such as information and communication literacy, global understanding, and global citizenship are also sometimes regarded as coming under the umbrella of 21st century skills. So there are several mostly used types of assessment. They include structured interviews, situational judgment tests, role plays, group exercises, in-basket exercises, work samples, and performance standards or appraisal. Number 9, essence of scoring. Requires scoring that focuses on the essence of the task. So students show complete understanding of the task and concepts. Scoring criteria helps students understand the specific knowledge and skills they must demonstrate to reach or exceed proficiency. These descriptions can be used to promote reflection and growth to provide specific, actionable feedback, leading to increased students' ownership and deeper levels of learning. Rubrics can help clarify your expectations and will show students how to meet them, making students accountable for their performance in an easy to follow format. The feedback that students receive through a grading rubric can help them improve their performance on revised or subsequent work. Last, feasible. Be feasible for the school or classroom environment. So the student must be able to achieve your task or your activity. Performance tasks are constructed so they can be delivered effectively in the school or classroom environment. So those are the 10 criteria on designing performance tasks. The next topic will be discussed by my co-reporter.
Hello everyone, today we were going to delve in the wonders of this pedagogical tool which is known as GRASP, a guide to develop authentic performance task. So before I proceed with my discussion, I would like to ask first, what is GRASP? Or what is GRASP model? So, according to Aidan Hammond of 2021, GRASP is a model for demonstrating performances of understanding using authentic assessment. It is one of many performance of understanding models, but it is ideally suited to the kind of project-based inquiries we do in design. And according also to him, it grasp also represent as a framework for organizing, delivering, and assessing a project-based assessment. The assessment associated with the inquiry is structured around the following expectation and goals. So, grasp model is really a thing that is crucial thing in the project-based assessment. When we say project-based assessment, it is an approach and an essential feature used in design education to assess students' performances. It is also known as an alternative to tests, an alternative test that allows students to engage with their learning in more concrete ways. So, for example, for example, the For example, a project-based assessment is instead of theory studying, a hands-on project asks students to apply what they've learned in an in-depth exploration. Next is we have the definition of the GRASP model. We have here the letter G, which means goals. It is to provide a statement of the task, and it is also to establish the goal, problem, challenge, or obstacle in the task. So, goal is able to answer the question, do I understand the task and concept that underpins this task, and how will I approach this task? Next is we have the role, which is to define the role of the students in the task and state the job of the students for the task. Teachers should define the role of the students in the performance task, and it also define the role and identify knowledge and strategies underlined with the task. And next is we have audience. It is to identify the target audience within the context of the scenario. Example audiences might include a client or a committee. So, audience, it is what students are solving problem for or creating the product for. It is where they can practice an empathy and consideration for the audience. Next is we have the first S, which is known as situation. It set the context of the scenario and it explain the situation. So the context or scenario of goal is what defines the situation or the first S in the GRASS model. So it is what is the scenario and how do I connect this in a real world situation. Next, we have the product. It is to clarify what the students will create and why they will create it. So its product is a clear picture of what and why creation, as a student should decide an action plan and seek feedback for the process of the product that they will be creating. Next is we have the last S, which is known as standards. So standards, it is provide students with a clear pictures of success. Identify specific standards for success and issue rubrics with the students or develop them with the students. Standards is it is known as a criteria, which means that how their work assessed by the assumed audience. So these standards it serve as of a guide in judging the task of the students. Now that we have learned what is the meaning of grasp and its definition, we can now jump into the benefits of grasp model in teachers' perspective. We have here number one is to develop authentic learning experiences. So in the overall structures of grasp model, it allows us future educators and teachers to identify more authentic learning experiences that drive our units of inquiry. Next, number two, we have here the clearer presentation of the purpose and content of a project-based inquiry. So, because of the way a grasped inquiry is framed, communication of the goals, content, and purpose of the inquiry is clearer. So, during planning, it is easier for teachers to plan and develop more authentic units. This has become particularly important for collaboration between teachers as most of our units are planned to be taught by several people. Next is we have the clarify the roles, perspective, and responsibilities of students. So the GRASP model, it aims to clarify this aspect of the inquiry. Teachers can choose resources, learning experiences, and content to support the students' development in these areas. Next is we have the communicate the expectation of the inquiry. So the grasp structures, the structure allows for clear communication of the rubric, assessment expectations, as well as the approaches to learning that students need to utilize to be successful. Um, Next, and last but not the least, it is the guide the selections of learning for success. So, through planning a unit around the GRASP framework, teachers can think critically and creatively about the type of learning experiences that are needed to support the inquiry. So, I think that is all my part of the report. Thank you everyone for listening.
Differentiating performance tasks for diverse learners. What is performance task? Any learning activity or assessment that asks students to perform to demonstrate their knowledge, understanding, and proficiency. Who are the diverse learners? Diverse learners include children and students of all abilities from racially, ethnically, culturally, and linguistically diverse backgrounds. Talking about diversity, here are the diversity in classroom. First, get to know your students. Take the time to understand your students' backgrounds, experiences, and cultural values to better support their learning and to create inclusive environment. Second, re-evaluate your teaching materials. Review your curriculum, textbooks, and resources for biases or lack of representation, and update them to reflect and celebrate diversity. Third, be willing to address inequality. Acknowledge and openly discuss issues of inequality and discrimination, helping students to develop critical thinking skills and promoting a sense of justice and fairness. Fourth, connect with families and the community. Foster strong relationship with students, families, and community members to create a support network that values and respects diversity. And last but not the least, meet diverse learning needs. Adapt your teaching method and strategies to accommodate the diverse learning styles, ability, and the background of your student. So we will now proceed to the different types of learners. First, we have auditory and musical learners. Auditory learners like to hear solution and examples explained to them and may gravitate towards music subject and group learning as a way to understand information. They would prefer listening to a lecture over reading a textbook or hearing the instruction for a project instead of figuring it out hands-on. The second one is the visual and spatial learners. These learners prefer information presented visually rather than spoken. Example of the learning method that visual learners might gravitate towards include the use of graphic organizers such as mind maps, flowcharts, diagram, graphs, and sketch note. Another example is the use of highlighters and note cards when studying information. Third, we have verbal learners. Verbal learners might have a preference for reading and writing, word games, and poems. An example of verbal learning would be listening to a lecture. A verbal learner would get more information from a lecture than non-verbal learner. Fourth, we have logical and mathematical learners. Logical learners look for the pattern and trends in what they learned. People who have strong logical mathematical intelligence may excel in performing mathematical operation or thinking concept through logically. They may also enjoy puzzles, mysteries, and scientific experiments. Fifth, we have physical and kinesthetic learning, commonly called hands-on learners that emphasizes a type of learning by doing. An example of kinesthetic learning experiment is when a child learns to use a swing or to ride a bike. They can read instruction or listen to instructions, but deep learning occurs via the process of doing. Sixth, we have social interpersonal learners. Social learners show preference towards group and collaboration. They enjoy heading up committees, participating in a group learning projects, and communicating with other students and adults. They enjoy school activities such as a speech, drama, and debate teams. Seventh, solitary and interpersonal learners. These learners can be visual, auditory, physical, verbal, or logical learners. Lastly, we have nature learners. Nature learners are the learners who do best when interacting with nature. Adults often use the natural learning process when they need to learn something that is important to them. For example, people have taught themselves to speak a new language, use computers, learn math, play chess, or to play a musical instrument.
A pleasant day to everyone. I am Harrison James L. Panal, and today we are talking about discovering rubrics. Now, what is rubrics? A rubric is a scoring tool that identifies the different criteria relevant to an assignment, assessment, or learning outcome, and states the possible levels of achievement in a specific, clear, and objective way. Rubrics used to assess project-based student work, including essays, group projects, creative endeavors, and oral presentations. Rubrics are helpful for instructors because they can help them communicate expectations to the students and assess students' work fairly and efficiently. Finally, rubrics can provide students with informative feedback on their strengths and weaknesses so that they can reflect on their performance and work on areas that need improvement. There are two types of rubrics: analytic rubrics and holistic rubric. Analytic rubrics. It is a two-dimensional rubric with levels of achievements as columns and assessment criteria as rows. Allows you to assess participants' achievements based on multiple criteria using a single rubric. You can assign different weights or values to different criteria and include an overall achievements by totaling the criteria. Analytic rubrics is written in a table form. Now here is an example of analytic scoring rubrics and its components. We have the title, description, criteria or components, scale scoring. Now the scale or scoring has two types, numerical scales and descriptive labels. Numerical scales, these use numbers such as 1, 2, 3, and 4 to represent different levels of achievement. The specific value and their meaning should be clearly defined in the rubric. Descriptive level. These use words or phrases such as beginning, developing, accomplished, or exemplary to describe different levels of achievement. Descriptive labels can be more meaningful than numbers or letters, but they need to be carefully chosen to avoid subjectivity. Now we have performance descriptor. Performance descriptors are resources that help to make the standards and benchmark more specific. They evolved from the state goals and standards, with each layer adding more detail and specificity. Now, holistic rubrics. It is a single criteria rubrics or one-dimensional used to assess participants' overall achievements on an activity or item based on predefined achievements levels. Holistic rubrics performance descriptions. Holistic rubrics. It is a single criteria rubrics or one-dimensional used to assess participants' overall achievement on an activity or item based on predefined achievement levels. Performance descriptions are written in paragraph and usually in full sentences. Now here is an example of holistic rubric and its component. We have the title, scale or scoring, the description, and the performance descriptor. Now what is the difference between analytic and holistic descriptor or performance descriptor? Descriptors in holistic are global. They describe the overall quality of the work based on an impression of all its elements working together. Descriptors in analytic are specific. They focus on individual criteria or components of the work, each with its own descriptor. Now let's move on to development of scoring rubrics. In analytic, first, identify the key components or criteria that contribute to overall performance. Before developing a rubric, it's crucial to identify and define the specific criteria or key components that contribute to overall performance. These criteria should directly align with the goals and objectives of the task or assessment. They serve as the foundation for the evaluation and guide the assessment process. Second, define levels of proficiency for each criterion separately. Each criterion should have defined levels of proficiency or performance. These levels represent different degrees of mastery or accomplishment within the specified criterion. Commonly, levels range from a lower proficiency level, such as novice or beginner, to a higher proficiency level, such as expert or advanced. Defining these levels provides clarity on the expected standards for performance. Number 3, or the third, develop descriptors for each level within each criterion. Descriptors articulate the characteristics or qualities associated with each proficiency level for a given criterion. They provide detailed descriptions of what performance looks like at each level. These descriptors help assessors and the individuals being assessed understand the nuances that differentiate one proficiency level from another, ensuring a more accurate and consistent evaluation. Number 4, or the fourth, consider using a matrix structure with criteria listed vertically and performance levels horizontally. A matrix structure is a common and effective format for organizing rubrics. Criteria are listed vertically and performance levels are presented horizontally. This format allows for a systematic and comprehensive assessment, as each cell in the matrix represents the intersection of a specific criterion and proficiency level. It enhances the clarity and accessibility of the rubric. The last, weight the criteria if certain aspects are more critical than others. Some criteria may carry more weight or importance than others in a given assessment. To reflect this, criteria can be weighted accordingly, assigning weights ensuring that certain aspects contribute more significantly to the overall score. This weighting can be based on the relative importance of each criterion in achieving the overall goals of the task or assessment. In holistic, begin by identifying the overall goals or outcomes you want to assess. Start the development of a holistic rubric by clearly identifying the overarching goals or outcomes you intend to assess. These goals should align with the purpose of the task or project. By understanding the broader objectives, you can create criteria that directly contribute to the achievements of these goals. Second, define different levels of performance, including excellent, proficient, basic, inadequate for the entire work. Establish distinct levels of performance that represent varying degrees of achievement. Commonly used labels include categories like excellent, proficient, basic, and inadequate. These labels should reflect a spectrum of performance from the highest to the lowest, providing a clear framework for assessment. Third, use clear and concise language to describe each level of performance. Develop concise and unambiguous language to describe each level of performance. Clearly articulate the characteristics and qualities associated with excellent, proficient, basic, and inadequate performance. Clarity in language helps both assessors and individuals being assessed understand the expectations for each level. Fourth, provide examples or descriptors for each level to help users understand the criteria. Offer concrete examples or descriptors for each level of performance. These examples illustrate what the expectations are for each level, making the rubric more user-friendly and ensuring a shared understanding among assessors and those being assessed. Examples provide practical guidance on interpreting the criteria. Last, consider using a numerical scale to quantify the levels, including 1 to 4 or 0 to 100. To introduce a quantitative element, consider using a numerical scale to further differentiate between levels of performance. This provides a more nuanced and precise assessment. For instance, a scale of 1 to 4 or 0 to 100 allows for a finer gradation of performance and can be particularly useful when a more detailed evaluation is needed. On to interpretation and utilization. In interpretation, consistency in interpretation. This involves ensuring that all assessors share a common understanding of the descriptors and criteria used in the assessment process. Consistency ensures that assessments are fair and uniform, minimizing subjective variations in interpretation among different assessors. Next is training and calibration. Assessors should undergo training to familiarize themselves with the rubric and the criteria being used in the assessment. Calibration exercises involve comparing assessment among different assessors to ensure their evaluation align closely. Training and calibration reduce discrepancies among assessors and promote reliability in the assessment process. Next is clarification of descriptors. Clear definition and explanation of each descriptor should be provided to avoid any ambiguity in their interpretation. Ambiguous descriptors can lead to inconsistent assessments and misunderstanding among assessors, affecting the overall reliability of the evaluation. Last, feedback mechanism. Establish a system where assessors can seek feedback and clarification on the rubric during the assessment process. A feedback mechanism promotes continuous improvement, helps address uncertainties, and ensures assessors stay aligned with the intended criteria. In utilization, first, guide for assessment. Rubrics serve as a structured guide for assessing performance or work against predefined criteria. Assessors use rubrics to evaluate and score individuals or projects based on specific, measurable criteria. It provides a transparent framework that helps maintain consistency and fairness in evaluations. Feedback tools. Rubrics are effective tools for providing detailed and constructive feedback to individuals or groups. They break down the evaluation's criteria, making it easier to communicate specific strengths and areas for improvement. Feedback based on rubrics can be more targeted, helping recipients understand their performance in a granular manner. Learning resource rubrics can serve as educational tools, helping learners understand expectation and criteria for success. By reviewing a rubric, individuals can gain insights into what is required to achieve a certain level of proficiency or mastery. It promotes a deeper understanding of the subject matters and the standards against which performance is measured. Next is professional development. Rubrics can be used as a foundation for professional development plans. Identifying specific skills and competencies within a rubric allows individuals to target areas for improvement in their professional growth. Professional development initiatives can be aligned with rubric criteria to support continuous learning and skill enhancement. Next is communication. Rubrics facilitate clear communication of expectations between assessors, learners, and stakeholders. They provide a shared language and understanding of what constitutes success or proficiency in a particular context. Rubrics enhance communication by making evaluation criteria explicit and accessible to all involved parties. Next is accountability. Rubrics contribute to accountability by establishing a transparent framework for assessment. Individuals and organizations can be held accountable to predefined standards and criteria, fostering a culture of responsibility and performance improvement. It helps ensure that evaluations are fair, consistency, and aligned with agreed upon expectations. Next is adaptability. Rubrics can be adapted to various contexts and purposes, making them versatile tools. They can be customized for different projects, assignments, or assessments to suit specific needs. The adaptable nature of rubrics allows for flexibility in evaluation while maintaining a structured and systematic approach. Last is reflection tools. Rubrics encourage reflective practice by providing a framework for self-assessment. Individuals can use rubrics to reflect on their own performance, identifying strengths and areas for improvement. It promotes a culture of continuous improvement and self-awareness. That's all. Thank you.